Alright, hello everybody, welcome back to another guide. This time we're checking out Malphite Jungle. We're checking out the kind of Malphite Jungle that I have found to be the most effective for carrying solo queue. This is pre-season, by the way, so it is updated to Season 7. We're going to go over the runes and masteries in this video because Malphite is a bit of a special case. Especially the way that I build him. Although it is very effective, it's not something you see very often. It's kind of similar to the old, or well, not old, but kind of similar to the Gragas build where you get a bunch of damage in the beginning, but then you get tankier as the game goes on. Anyway, looking at the rune page, what we're really looking for here is we're looking for cooldown reduction, clear speed, and damage to champions. Starting with the seals, we have flat armor because you need that on almost every jungler. Not quite every jungler. There are some junglers that have enough sustain to where you can get away with scaling HP seals. Malphite is not one of them. Even though he does have his 10% HP shield, the passive, it's not quite enough without armor seals. You will need these. Secondly, we have attack speed quints with hybrid penetration reds. The reason for that is because it gives us the most damage possible to champions combined with the highest clear speed we can get. You will almost get the exact same amount of attack speed from 9 attack speed marks as you will get from 3 attack speed quints. It's not exactly the same, but if you did go attack speed marks, the question is, what are you going to have for quints? And the best thing you can do right there is actually ability power, but the reason why I like the hybrid penetration better than the ability power is because it affects your clear speed greatly. So, basically, if you go attack speed reds and AP quints, you will still get a lot of damage to champions, just like this page gives you, but you're not going to get the same clear speed because the ability power doesn't do much for your auto attacks. Even when your W is active, because the AP scaling on your W is fairly low. Actually, it's extremely low, so that's the reason for that. As for the blues, we have enough cooldown reduction to reach 10% at level 18. The reason for this is because the items that I buy, my particular 6-item build, has 30% cooldown reduction in it, which means I don't want to go above 10% in my runes. And I also get CDR in my masteries, although I'll get into that in a minute. If you have different items where you don't get 30%, like you only get 20%, what you can do, and I recommend that you do this, is you switch out these flat CDR ones for scaling CDR, and you switch out one attack speed quint, for another CDR quint. This way you'll get 20% from your rune page, which means you can get away with buying less cooldown reduction in your items. Whoops. Like I said, this is not what I do, but it is something that you can do if you build your items a little differently. As for the masteries, you don't have to go Thunderlords. This is my page. This is what I do. You can go Courage of the Colossus. Actually, I think I'm just going to remove the points, and then we'll go through all of your different options here. So when you make masteries in Season 7, you have to decide pretty much before anything else what keystone is it that you really want. And Malphite is a little bit special because we're going to be very, very damage focused in the beginning of the game, and also quite damage focused in the mid game, but then we're going to get very tanky later on. Which means, oh, and by the way, almost all of our damage is burst damage. Which means we only really have 2 options for our masteries. We're either going to try to one-shot somebody with Thunderlords, or we want Courage of the Colossus because that mastery is just broken right now. Malphite can proc Courage of the Colossus, but it's only going to be with his ultimate. But it doesn't really matter because Courage of the Colossus is on a 30-second cooldown anyway, so you don't need more than one way to proc this mastery in order for it to be worth it on a champion, necessarily. Anyway, regardless of which one you're going to go with, you're probably going to go into the Cunning Tree. So let's just start with the Cunning Tree. So Savagery versus Wanderer, you probably want Savagery. It's pretty much mandatory for junglers because Savagery is clear speed, and clear speed is one of the most important things for junglers. The faster you can clear, the more you can gank, and the more healthy you are when you gank. Plus, you can get to level 6 faster, which is even more crucial because we're playing Malphite. Runic Affinity, Secret Stash is pretty much useless. If you want potions in the jungle, just buy the refillable jungle thing that has 5 potions in it. Don't go Secret Stash. Assassin is kind of dumb because as a jungler, when you gank, you always have a teammate nearby. Assassin is only really relevant when you run into somebody just randomly and they're out of position and you don't have teammates nearby and you're going to try to one-shot them or duel them for whatever reason. Which doesn't really happen that often, and even when it does happen, if you're playing Malphite, you probably don't want to try to duel people too much. That's not really what you're made for. So I would not go Assassin. I'd rather have the buff duration from Runic Affinity. Merciless versus Meditation. This is actually quite interesting. Meditation is very, very underrated, and especially if you have to give your blue buff to your mid laner, Meditation is so good. In terms of clear speed, Merciless does nothing for you, and Meditation will help you with your clears, because this mastery will allow you to spend your mana more freely. So you can honestly go with both of them, and I think Meditation is very, very underrated. Personally, I like to go with Merciless, though. Despite of how underrated I think Meditation is, the reason I want Merciless is because a large part of snowballing solo queue as Malphite with the way that I play him depends on you being able to deal a lot of burst damage. So that's why I want this. Bandit is completely useless, so the choice is really between Dangerous Game and Greenfathers. I think Greenfathers is pretty much mandatory for all junglers because it works on the jungle camps, which means when you walk into a brush and then you auto-attack or use a spell on, say, for example, the blue buff right after that, Greenfathers will actually help you clear that blue buff faster. So you will get quite a decent clear speed out of this mastery, so I recommend you go with this. As far as precision versus intelligence goes, I like intelligence because cooldown reduction is incredible on Malphite, and intelligence gives you 5% right off the bat without you having to do anything. And we also get 5 flat percent from our runes, and also 5 scaling from our runes. So when we hit level 6, we're going to have more than 10% CDR just from our setup alone, without any items at all, which is great. However, there is an argument to be made about precision. The flat penetration from precision will impact your clear speed. And like we said earlier, clear speed is incredibly important for junglers. On top of that, precision also makes your ganks hit harder. So you're not going to gank as often because you don't have the CDR from intelligence, but when you do gank, it's going to kill. And that's also really important, of course. That's the reason why we're in the Cunning Tree in the first place, is because we want our ganks to hit really hard. Whichever one you want to go with is up to you. You can argue for both of these masteries. They're both incredible, honestly, but like I said, I like to go intelligence. And lastly, we have the Thunderlords, because it deals damage, and we like killing people. Simple as that. So that's what I do when I go into the Cunning Tree. In terms of the rest of the points, what you could do in theory is you could go something like Fury here with Exposed Weakness, maybe Vampirism, maybe Natural Talent for extra damage, and then some sort of Mastery down here for additional damage. This is possible, and you will kill people really fast with this. Plus, your clear speed will be even better. So why don't I do this personally? What's the problem with the Ferocity Tree? Well, the problem with the Ferocity Tree is that it's not Insight, which it might sound ridiculous that one mastery can overpower an entire tree like that, but in my book, it actually can. And the reason for this is because a lot of the time when you play Malphite, the way you make plays include you flash ulting someone, and you need insight for that. Well, you don't need insight for that, but you can do it much more often with insight. And having insight takes a huge number of seconds off your flash cooldown. I think it's like, oh, I don't remember, is that 45 seconds or something like that? It's crazy high, so insight is incredible for Malphite. Not to mention it also works on your smite, although that's a minor detail. So going into the resolve tree, we look at recovery versus unyielding. Recovery, just like meditation, is in my opinion very underrated. It actually is a big deal, especially for people or for laners, but even though we're going to be building damage in the beginning of the game, we will be getting relatively tanky later on in the game, and so I find that unyielding is just better because it scales harder. And Malphite is one of those champions that scales really hard with resists because of how, I believe it is his E that scales passively with resists. It's pretty amazing. So I think unyielding is superior unless you're struggling really, really badly with clearing in the jungle, in which case you might want to go recovery. But when I play Malphite, I don't struggle clearing the jungle at all, so I find that unyielding works just fine. Also, Tough Skin helps a lot in terms of clearing the jungle. Obviously, Siege Master does nothing for you. It's a lane mastery. So it's really a question of Explorer versus Tough Skin. Explorer, I only really go on junglers that have insane sustain, because Tough Skin is a huge deal, especially when you're clearing the raptors. You take 2 less damage from every single attack that you tank from one of those raptors. That's a big deal. It's a huge deal, actually. So Tough Skin is pretty much necessary, especially if you don't go recovery. If you actually went with recovery here, maybe you could go Explorer because you wouldn't need the defense from Tough Skin in the jungle. But we don't do that, so I like Tough Skin here. Speaking of defense in the jungle, I go Veteran Scars because 50 health is a lot, and Runic Armor does not work with your passive, and even if it did work with your passive, it still wouldn't be worth using because it's not that much shielding you're getting out of it. It's 8%. This means that you have to shield yourself for about 600 HP, or heal yourself. You have to heal and shield yourself for about 600 HP before Runic Armor is better than Veteran Scars, because 8% of 600 is 50 health, and Veteran Scars gives you 50 health. So honestly, I can't see an argument for why you would go Runic Armor on Malphite. It just doesn't work. It's not worth it. And then, of course, Insight. The reason why we're even in this tree in the first place. Summoner cooldown is just amazing. I don't know what else to say. It is battling Fearless, which is a really good mastery, but still, Fearless is not Insight, so I still wouldn't go with it. I want to go over the other option you have, which is Courage of the Colossus. If you do go Courage of the Colossus, you can either get Tenacity and Slow Resist or Legendary Guardian. Either one is fine. Malphite scales, like I said, super hard with resists, armor specifically, so there's an argument to be made about Legendary Guardian being a really great mastery. But Tenacity and Slow Resist is pretty amazing as well, so I don't know. If the enemy team doesn't have a lot of CC, obviously Legendary Guardian is just the better choice. But if they do have a lot of CC, you might want to go with Swiftness. It just depends. And then, of course, Courage of the Colossus. You don't necessarily have to put the rest of your points into the Cunning tree. You could put them into the Ferocity tree for extra clear speed. The reason why I wouldn't do that, though, is because Cunning still gives you clear speed. It gives you clear speed through Savagery and Greenfather's Gift, not to mention the buff duration is pretty nice, and you also get a little bit extra damage, which kind of compensates for the fact that you're not going Ferocity. So those are the different options you have on Malphite Jungle, and this ultimately is the page that I end up using when I play Malphite Jungle. So thank you guys for watching. If you like what I'm doing here on this channel and you want to support the channel, you can check out my Patreon page. There's a link in the description below. And if you want to see the item builds that I do for Malphite Jungle, there will be a link for that video in the description as well. So thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Peace.